A little sluggish today, aren't we? That was the entire message. 6 words, no greeting, no punctuation beyond a period that felt like a knife tip. It hit my inbox at 7:43 a.m. while I was still in my robe, sipping lukewarm coffee beside a compliance dashboard blinking back at me like it owed me an apology. The sender, Elaine Mercer, our CFO, the kind of woman who smiled with her teeth, not her eyes. She'd CC'd her son, Blake Mercer, the CEO in name only, who'd inherited both the title and his mother's entitlement like family heirlooms. I stared at the email for a long minute, reread it twice, then leaned back, letting the quiet hum of my laptop fill the apartment. Slack notifications were already sparking to life. Someone dropped a popcorn emoji in the private channel. Another posted a gif of a cat getting slapped off a counter. No one said my name, but I could feel it vibrating through the thread like static. You don't have to be tagged to know you're the joke of the morning. The part that really stung wasn't even the insult. It was the timing. Elaine sent it less than 12 hours after I'd flagged a compliance discrepancy in the acquisition filings. A small footnote, technically harmless, but enough to raise questions during buyer due diligence. It wasn't the first time I'd caught something like that. I'd spent 8 years at Arden Analytics fixing the kind of small mistakes that could turn into million-dollar fires. My title, Director of Systems Integration and Compliance Liaison, sounded fancy enough to impress LinkedIn recruiters. But in reality, I was the duct tape holding together departments that refused to speak the same language. When sales screwed up projections, I corrected them. When legal botched the contract formatting, I redlined the clauses. When I'd failed to log retention policies, I rewrote the damn scripts. But the credit? That always slid right into Elaine's manicured hands like it was magnetized to her signature block. So no, being called sluggish didn't surprise me. I'd been called worse. By vendors, by clients, even by that regional director who once microwaved fish in the break room and blamed me for the smell. What burned was the stupidity. That a CFO 1 week away from closing a $150 million acquisition had time to mock the person safeguarding the company's compliance trail. I didn't reply. Just sat there, sipped my coffee gone cold, and let the heat creep up my neck. Then I took a screenshot. No edits, no cropping, just the truth frozen in pixels. I dropped it into a private folder I'd been quietly curating for months, labeled simply Clause 4B. Then I closed the laptop, showered, dressed, and drove to the office like it was any other Tuesday. No one met my eyes that morning. Blake breezed past my cubicle humming some pop song, oblivious as ever. Elaine didn't show up, working remotely, which we all knew meant Chardonnay in a Yeti tumbler and edits on the investor deck from her kitchen island. By noon, the Slack chatter shifted to lunch orders and office memes, as if nothing had happened. But I could still feel it, the invisible bruise where dignity should be. At 3, Blake called an impromptu Zoom meeting. Elaine joined late, pretending bad Wi-Fi, even though her house had better connectivity than our entire office network. I stayed quiet, nodded when expected, contributed notes to the shared doc, all while pretending I hadn't just been publicly slapped that morning. When the call ended, I muted, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. My heart wasn't racing anymore, but something colder had taken root. Because here's what Elaine didn't know. She thought she was just being snide. She didn't realize she'd stepped on a landmine. Clause 4B of the acquisition contract was explicit. Any act that undermines, obstructs, or diminishes a designated key person without buyer consent constitutes material breach. And guess who was listed by name under that clause? Me, Harper Quinn. So no, I didn't reply to Elaine's little power jab. I didn't forward it to HR or drop some snarky emoji in Slack like the others would have. I just sat there and let her words sit in my inbox like a fuse waiting to burn. Because that one short sentence, "A little sluggish today, aren't we?" wasn't just rude. It was documented. It was time-stamped. And it was addressed to me, a legally designated key person in a live acquisition contract. I'd read the fine print on that deal more times than I cared to admit. Section 4B had been my late-night comfort reading when I was helping legal draft the original integration clause 3 months ago. It wasn't supposed to apply to people like me. It was meant to protect the executive tier from being reshuffled mid-deal. But when the buyers insisted on including technical continuity under key personnel, I'd been quietly inserted at the end of the list. Small print, line 3. Blake thought it was a nice gesture. Elaine hadn't even noticed. The rest of that week blurred into a quiet kind of humiliation. The first sign came Thursday when a meeting invite never showed up on my calendar. "Oh," someone said later, "I thought you were on the thread." Then came a draft report sent to the leadership group that somehow excluded my name from the author field, and by Friday, I could feel my own projects being lifted from under me, like rugs pulled from a stage set. Blake had started using my financial integration slides as if he'd written them, complete with my phrasing, and even the same color coding I used for risk tiers. Elaine called them a strong foundation in front of the board, which was code for mine now. I didn't fight it. I just documented everything, quietly, methodically. Screenshots, calendar timestamps, access logs. Every slight went into the same folder. Clause 4B. By Sunday night, there were 9 files inside. By Monday morning, 11. Then came the moment that really drove it home. I opened an internal press draft by accident. Someone had attached it to a general Slack channel instead of the leadership one. I skimmed it out of habit, then stopped cold. There it was, a full paragraph praising Elaine Mercer's visionary financial guidance and exceptional leadership in driving Arden Analytics' strategic acquisition. Not a single mention of me, not even a generic team contribution. Just a void where my name should have been, 8 years of work erased by omission. I didn't forward it. I didn't complain. I just stared at it until the words blurred. That night, I poured a glass of Cabernet, opened the acquisition contract, and scrolled to the clause I'd bookmarked months ago. There it was, in black and white. Any attempt to reassign, reduce, or diminish the role, authority, or visibility of designated key personnel without buyer's written consent shall constitute material breach and provide grounds for immediate withdrawal or renegotiation. I read it twice, then again. Below the legal text, my name, Harper Quinn, Director, Systems Integration and Compliance Liaison. I leaned back in my chair and let the reality settle. They'd erased me from everything visible, but they'd forgotten that contracts remember. Contracts don't gossip or gaslight. They record, and the buyer's legal counsel would notice if that contract started breathing funny. So I opened a new message. To Primary Counsel at Barker Ellison Law. COM, the firm representing the buyer. Subject, Internal Conduct. Key Personnel, Harper Quinn. The body was short, professional, and sterile. Please find attached correspondence relevant to the treatment of a listed key person within the acquisition framework. Section 4B excerpt included for your reference. Documentation attached. I didn't CC Elaine. I didn't warn Blake. I didn't even copy my personal account. I just attached the screenshot of Elaine's email, the contract excerpt with my name highlighted, and a single page listing 12 instances of exclusion. Then I pressed send. It was 3:17 a.m. The apartment was dark except for the laptop glow reflecting off the mug beside me. I watched the little paper plane icon vanish across the screen, felt my pulse slow, and closed the lid. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. When I arrived at the office Tuesday morning, my badge worked. Mostly. Not in the executive wing, not in the conference corridor. Just my own floor and the kitchen. That was fine. I didn't need access. I already had everything that mattered. By Wednesday morning, I knew I was being ghosted in real time. Meeting invites I'd created were suddenly reassigned to Elaine Mercer, host. Shared drives I'd managed for years now showed access denied. Even my edits on the Q&A deck for the buyer walkthrough were gone, replaced with newer versions that had my formulas stripped out and my initials deleted from the revision log. I sat there in the humming glow of my dual monitors, watching my own footprint disappear like someone was sweeping away chalk lines. I didn't say a word. I just opened another spreadsheet, titled it Exclusion Timeline, XLSX, and started logging everything. Each row was an act of quiet erasure. Deleted comments, missing invites, altered permissions. Each column a timestamp and name. I color-coded the entries by source. Red for Elaine, blue for Blake, yellow for unknown. It was petty. It was precise. It was evidence. By Friday, the list stretched 63 lines long. That afternoon, Blake pinged me on Slack with his usual tone. Upbeat, clueless, a man who believed buzzwords counted as leadership. "Hey Harper," he wrote, "just looping you out of the final prep call. Elaine's keeping the team lean for optics. All good. Appreciate your groundwork, though. Looping you out." I stared at those words until the timestamp turned gray. Then I sent a single thumbs-up emoji. That was all. I didn't need to argue. He'd just given me another receipt. That night, I stayed late. Not in the office, but at home, the one place no one could revoke my access. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hiss of the AC and the rhythmic click of my keyboard. I compiled every piece: emails, drive logs, message exports, the press draft, all the little digital fingerprints they thought they could scrub clean. By 2 a.m., the folder was 23 items deep, mirrored across 2 encrypted backups and 1 private off-network drive. When I was done, I renamed it from Clause 4B to Firestarter. Monday morning came like a storm. The office buzzed with that strange mix of tension and fake cheer that always precedes a major signing. The 17th floor boardroom had been reserved for the buyer presentation: coffee carafes, fruit trays, printed agendas. I wasn't invited, of course, but Chloe Rivera from Legal, one of the few who still acknowledged me, slipped me the calendar link with a short message. "You might want to sit in." No explanation. No smiley. Just that. I logged in 5 minutes before the start time. Camera off, mic muted, name dimmed in gray in the participant list. Elaine appeared first on screen, wrapped in a white blazer like some high priestess of financial virtue. Blake followed, fidgeting with his tie, trying to look important. Across from them sat 3 buyers from Altair Holdings, 2 from New York, 1 from Frankfurt, and their lead counsel, Daniel Hawthorne. He had the kind of calm that made other executives sweat. The meeting began with Elaine's usual performance: vision, growth, synergy. Every slide was mine, repainted and renamed. Blake nodded at rehearsed intervals, throwing in phrases like cross-departmental leverage and scalable infrastructure. I watched, silent, my hands folded. Then Elaine glanced over her shoulder at me, just a flicker, a smirk, and said, "Let's not keep them waiting. Some of us like to move at full speed." A ripple of polite laughter circled the room. I felt my face flush but didn't move. Then I saw it. Daniel's associate, a young woman in a navy suit, frowned at her phone, then opened her laptop and began typing fast. Elaine kept talking. The associate whispered something to Daniel. He looked up, first at her, then at me, then at Elaine. A heartbeat later, he stood. "Apologies," he said, his tone smooth, unhurried. "We'll need to step out for a moment." He and his associate left the room. Elaine froze mid-sentence, then laughed softly. "I'm sure it's just a clarification," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. I knew exactly what it was. 40 minutes earlier, before logging in, I had scheduled a delayed send email to Daniel Hawthorne's inbox. Subject line, Section 4B, Internal Conduct. Attachments, 3 files, 1 screenshot, 1 clause, 1 timeline. The fuse was lit. And now, I was sitting front row for the explosion. The door opened again after what felt like an hour, but was probably only 5 minutes. Daniel Hawthorne walked back in, followed by his associate. Neither looked hurried. Neither looked upset. They just had that particular stillness, the kind people get when they already know what comes next. Elaine straightened in her seat and smoothed her blazer, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. Blake gave a stiff smile that looked more like a grimace. Daniel didn't sit immediately. He stood at the head of the table and said, "Would you mind switching the projector input to HDMI?" The tech assistant scrambled to comply, fumbling with the cable until the screen flickered to life. The familiar blue desktop appeared, then a PDF window titled Altair Arden Acquisition Agreement. Final draft. Daniel scrolled calmly, stopping on page 37. The header was bold and unmistakable. Section 4B, Continuity and Designated Key Personnel. Elaine shifted in her chair. Blake leaned forward as if he might read himself out of trouble. Daniel began to read aloud, voice even, deliberate. The buyer considers the uninterrupted function of designated key personnel to be foundational to post-closing integration. Any attempt to reassign, reduce, interfere with, or otherwise undermine said personnel without buyer's written approval shall constitute material breach and grounds for immediate withdrawal of offer. The room went silent. The tick of the wall clock sounded like a metronome counting down to disaster. Then Daniel clicked once more. My email filled the screen. Subject, Section 4B, Internal Conduct, Time Sensitive. Underneath, my signature block, my title, and the list of attachments. He opened the first. Elaine's email. "A little sluggish today, aren't we? Timestamp visible. Copied to Blake." Daniel zoomed in so that the words took up the whole screen. "This," he said quietly, "was received last week?" Elaine's jaw tightened. "That was meant as a light-hearted remark," she said, her voice brittle but controlled. Daniel didn't answer. He clicked again, this time displaying the contract clause, my name highlighted in yellow. Harper Quinn, Director, Systems Integration and Compliance Liaison. Then he turned back to the table. "You are aware," he said, "that this clause identifies Ms. Quinn as a key person. Correct?" Blake blinked twice, the way people do when their brains are buffering. "I believe so," he mumbled. Elaine started to interject, but Daniel raised a hand. Calm, polite, but absolute. "We've also reviewed several recent internal documents and communications," he continued, suggesting Ms. Quinn was removed from critical briefings, stripped of authorship, and excluded from operational discussions. "Were we notified of these changes?" No one spoke. Elaine's smile had frozen into something closer to rigor mortis. Blake tried for a laugh that never came. Finally, Elaine said, "These internal dynamics don't affect the deliverables." "Ms. Quinn's role was largely supportive," Daniel interrupted, still soft-spoken. "Her role," he said, "was defined by contract, and that contract does not allow arbitrary redefinition." He turned toward the projector, scrolling slowly. "Section 4B is quite clear." The cursor hovered over the words, material breach. "We'll be pausing the signing process pending review." That word, pausing, hit harder than any shout could have. Blake's shoulders slumped. Elaine looked like she'd swallowed glass. The buyers whispered among themselves in German, the tone sharp, clipped. Daniel closed the laptop, folded his hands, and said, "We'll need to confer privately with counsel." Then to me, "Ms. Quinn, I'd like a few moments with you after." He stood. The buyers followed. The door clicked shut behind them. The air in the room turned heavy, like the oxygen had been replaced with judgment. For a long beat, no one moved. Then Elaine exhaled through her nose, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said lightly, "this is obviously a misunderstanding. They'll calm down once we explain." Blake didn't respond. He just stared at the table like he was trying to find a reset button. I said nothing. I sat against the glass wall, no nameplate, no coffee cup, no title. Just stillness. The clause was speaking louder than I ever could. And somewhere in the silence between heartbeats, I felt it. The shift. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was leverage. Minutes passed. No one dared move. The conference room, once dressed for celebration, had the stillness of a courtroom after a verdict. Elaine's fingers drummed faintly against the table. Her smile glued in place like porcelain beginning to crack. Blake sat motionless, his jaw slack, staring at the folder he'd been pretending to read for 20 minutes. The clock on the wall ticked. Then, without warning, the door swung open again. Standing there was Edward Hanlon, the board's internal compliance officer, mid-50s, cardigan under his blazer, the kind of man who always smelled faintly of toner and anxiety. He wasn't supposed to be here. Ed never came to signings. Elaine. Blake, he said flatly. Boardroom, now. Elaine blinked, uncomprehending. Excuse me? He didn't repeat himself. Blake stood instantly, papers half falling from his hands. Elaine followed, slower, like someone being led somewhere she didn't want to go. Ed's eyes landed on me as he turned to leave. Harper, he said, voice clipped. Stay close. I'll want a word. Then they were gone. I stayed in my seat. 10 minutes. 15. The building hummed quietly outside the glass, 1,000 fluorescent ghosts pretending not to notice what was happening upstairs. Someone from HR dropped off a folder and vanished without eye contact. A few of the younger analysts peeked in, wide-eyed, whispering like kids outside detention. Finally, the boardroom door opened again. Blake emerged first, face blotchy, mouth pressed into a thin line. He didn't look at me. Elaine followed, stiff-backed, her expression stretched tight in a parody of composure. For the first time in my life, I saw her without her armor. She looked smaller, diminished. Then Ed reappeared. Your turn, he said. The boardroom was stripped of ceremony now. No buyers, no fruit trays, no projection screens, just quiet and consequence. On the table in front of Ed lay 3 papers, a printed copy of my email to the buyers, the acquisition contract open to Section 4B, and a new folder labeled Compliance Escalation, Personnel Breach. He didn't speak right away, just studied me, hands steepled. Why didn't you come to us first? He asked finally. His tone wasn't accusatory, more weary curiosity than anger. Would you have listened? I said. He paused, sighed, and gave a small nod. Fair point. He tapped the folder. We're initiating a full internal review. The Buyers' Council has formally paused the deal until our findings are complete. Your documentation. He looked up at me again. Let's just say it's extensive. I stayed silent. There will be fallout, he continued. Board-level decisions, possible legal exposure, terminations. We'll need you to answer some questions under NDA. You'll be protected. I'm fine, I said quietly, and I was. For the first time in months, maybe years, I actually meant it. Ed leaned back, studying me for a long moment. The buyers requested something else, he said. My heartbeat quickened once. They want to speak with you directly. Their counsel said, and I quote, "She seems to understand this company better than the people who tried to sell it." I didn't smile, didn't even blink. Ed gave a short laugh, half disbelief, half respect. Take the call, he said finally. Whatever happens next here, you're not the one in trouble. When I left that room, the floor felt different under my shoes. Elaine's office door was closed, her nameplate already gone from the glass. Blake's was shut too, blinds drawn. HR staff moved quietly, the way people do after a fire. On my desk sat a plain manila envelope. No name, no note. Inside was a copy of the investor press draft, the one that had erased me, and a single yellow sticky note. History has teeth. Good thing you kept the receipts. I didn't know who left it. I didn't need to. I smiled once, then slid the paper into the shred bin. The buyers wanted to talk. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't the one asking for a seat at the table. They were. By Friday morning, the boardroom was booked again, but this time there were no glossy folders, no fruit trays, no cheerful intern arranging name tags. Just 6 chairs, 3 buyers from Altair Holdings, 1 lawyer, 1 compliance officer, and me. Elaine wasn't there. Blake wasn't invited. The mood was clinical, almost surgical, the kind of quiet that precedes a signed execution. Daniel Hawthorne sat at the head of the table, flipping calmly through a stack of documents, while Ed Hanlon watched in silence beside him. The air felt heavy with certainty. No one here was pretending anymore. Daniel closed the folder with a soft snap. "We've completed our review," he said. "As of this morning, Altair Holdings is rescinding its acquisition offer. Section 4B was violated." He said it like a judge reading a sentence, not a man making a decision. The words carried no triumph, just inevitability. "We'll notify regulatory counsel and adjust exposure accordingly." He looked up once, meeting my eyes. The clause did its job. Ed nodded, clasping his hands on the table. "We'll proceed with internal corrective actions. The board has already been briefed. There were no protests, no scramble to salvage what was left." The silence was the sound of something large collapsing. Reputation, authority, illusion. Elaine's empire of fear and performance had lasted a decade. It disintegrated in 48 hours. By noon, HR had sent the official notices. Elaine Mercer, administrative leave, pending audit of executive conduct. The phrasing was polite, almost tender, but everyone knew what it meant. Blake's resignation followed 4 hours later. His email hit my inbox at 4:13 p.m. Effective immediately, pursuing new opportunities, the usual euphemisms for disgrace. I read it once and deleted it. The building felt lighter without them. No more tension vibrating through the air, no more forced laughter or half-whispered power plays. Just quiet. When I walked past Elaine's office, the blinds were open for the first time in years. The desk was bare. No monitor, no family photos, not even a stapler left behind. She'd ruled that space like a queen guarding her crown, and now it was just emptiness. I made myself a coffee and sat back down at my desk. No one looked at me. No one avoided me either. It was like the entire floor had collectively decided that silence was the only safe language left. The call came an hour later. Not from Ed, not from HR, not even from legal. It was Reinhardt, the vice president of global acquisitions at Altair Holdings, the same man who'd sat stone-faced across the table days earlier, watching Elaine self-destruct in real time. His accent was crisp, his words precise. "We won't be proceeding with the Arden acquisition," he said. "However, we would like to retain your expertise. You understand the inner workings of this company in a way few people do." I stayed quiet. "This will not be a formal employment offer," he continued. "You'll serve as a discreet consultant on future integration audits. 6 months, remote. Compensation, double your current rate." He paused, letting the number hang in the air. "Your insight into behavioral and procedural patterns is unusually valuable." "Send it in writing," I said. It arrived within the hour. A non-disclosure agreement, a consulting contract, and a personal note from Reinhardt himself. For those who document, truth eventually serves. I printed it, signed, and slipped the copy into the Firestarter folder, now my own archive of quiet warfare. By Monday, HR had posted an internal memo outside the legal suite. It listed standard reminders, harassment policies, cybersecurity training, ethics hotline. But pinned neatly at the top, behind plastic, was something new. A printout of Elaine's email. "A little sluggish today, aren't we?" Under it, paper-clipped, my redacted message to the buyer's legal team. Highlighted clauses, timestamps, my name. The label read, Exhibit A, Internal Compliance Breach, Do Not Remove. I walked past it on my way to the elevator, coffee in hand, expression calm. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. Because sometimes the most devastating sound isn't a shout or a slam. It's silence. The kind that spreads, echoing through every hallway, until everyone understands what it means. The contract had spoken, and everyone at Arden Analytics was listening. The following week, the building felt hollow, like the soundproof shell of its former self. Conversations muted, laughter restrained, people typing quieter than usual, afraid to disturb the new order. HR had already rearranged the seating chart. Elaine's nameplate was gone. Her office door stood open, revealing nothing but a faint outline on the carpet where her desk once sat. Blake's corner office had been reassigned to someone from finance. Temporarily, they said, but everyone knew no one wanted that chair. It still smelled like panic. My badge now opened every door again, not because anyone reinstated it, but because Ed had quietly reset the system after the board's review. Full access restored, he'd said, sliding the new badge across the table with something that almost looked like respect. There were no congratulations, no handshakes, no speeches, just acknowledgement, and that was enough. For the first few days, people avoided eye contact, not out of hostility, but out of caution. I'd become a legend in whispers, the one who took down the Mercers with a single email. I didn't correct them. I didn't feed the story either. Let them believe whatever version made sense. The truth was less cinematic. It wasn't revenge. It was documentation. It was reading the contract, following the rules everyone else ignored, and pressing send when the time came. My phone buzzed late Wednesday afternoon. It was an email from Reinhardt. Subject, Consulting Scope. Phase 1. A 6-month plan attached, detailing post-acquisition oversight for 3 pending deals. My name listed at the top under Independent Compliance Liaison. No title inflation, no PR flourish, just clarity. Beneath it, a single line from him. Precision, not volume, wins wars. I accepted within the hour. That night, I walked through the quiet halls of Arden Analytics one last time. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off empty glass offices. I paused by the legal suite bulletin board. The printout was still there. Elaine's 6 careless words pinned under plastic like an artifact. "A little sluggish today, aren't we?" Next to it, the redacted copy of my message to Altair's counsel, the clause highlighted in yellow, my name visible beneath it. Someone had added a small note in pen at the bottom. Never underestimate quiet people. I smiled, not out of satisfaction, but recognition. That was me, the quiet one, the fixer behind the curtain, the one who kept everything from burning until someone mistook the silence for weakness. I rode the elevator down alone, my reflection split in the mirrored walls. A woman in a charcoal blazer, coffee cup in hand, steady gaze. No heroism, no vindication, just equilibrium. When the doors opened, the city light poured in. The air outside felt sharp, alive. The next morning, I logged into my personal email before work. There was a message from Ed Hanlon. Subject, FYI. Inside was a scanned image from the board minutes, an official record of disciplinary actions. Elaine Mercer, terminated for cause. Blake Mercer, resignation accepted without severance. Below that, a short addendum in Ed's handwriting. Some clauses bite harder than others. I closed the email and exhaled. A week later, Altair's legal team sent my consulting contract countersigned. It arrived in a sleek envelope stamped in gold. I placed it in a fireproof box at home, the same one that once held my Firestarter folder. On top, I laid the first page of the acquisition contract, Section 4B circled in red ink. A reminder. That evening, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city. The skyline glowed with 1,000 other offices, 1,000 other stories like mine. Somewhere, another quiet professional was probably cleaning up a mess, staying late, thinking no one noticed. They would. Eventually, they always do. I poured myself a glass of wine, not for celebration, but closure. My inbox pinged softly. Reinhardt again. Just 2 words this time. Welcome aboard. I smiled faintly, leaned back, and let the night breeze wash over me. The war was over, and I hadn't shouted once. Just one email, one clause, and the silence that followed did the rest.